And we know Robin is coming, so
Yeah.
we have, and Beth is as well. So we've got a number of updates, which I'll go through fairly quickly. And then we're going to hear from Kristen about her proposal. And hopefully we'll have time to also spend a little time with that new Education and Art Trust. Also recognizing this is a little bit over a year for us. So this is like our, with this, we started, I think, in October of 23. So
Whoa.
this is our first full year concluding. We started in March, I'm not sure, but this is like our first year of having this group together. Because remember, we had a few members at the beginning. Several of you were not here at that point. So let's start with a vote to accept the minutes of November 20th, and there are extra copies here if people need them.
So moved. I'll second it.
Second, any questions or changes? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, some updates. Beth, start with you about the inventory.
Yes, thank you everyone for all your research. It's going very well. I don't know if everyone had time to check what Sean sent out earlier, but I'm just going to keep updating it. And if you see edits on any of the material that you've worked on, or have any changes or have new content, send it my way. And then I think we'll do this again. I'll keep making the updates and send it out again. And Chris sent me like maybe 8 new pieces. Well, not new, but
Not
new
new
to the
pieces,
inventory.
right.
So if you notice anything, send it my way. Some places like the library, which you have, there's 200 artifacts there. So I
Yeah,
put in a little comment about there are 200 artifacts at the library. This is one of them. So we can maybe tackle that in different ways going forward. So thank you, everyone. And then Kate, thank you for sending me your content. And I just saw Monty on the way out, and our bios are up on the landing page.
yeah,
So-
so very good.
So it's a link to them,
It's
A
a link to our
them.
a link
bios.
to them.
To the PDF.
Yes.
Yes, correct. Thank you.
And I think the updated other information, some of the updated information we wanted is up there, like about the Pierce Island project, but not all of it yet. Though Monty said he would check on that so that we'd be up to date on criteria, up to date on the new ordinance, things like that. But anything that you all think we should include on the web that isn't there, let's be sure we keep flagging that, because the more we can get up there and then we can refer people to it, it's the easiest way to.
And
do
please,
that.
please send it to me. And then I will get it to Monty. I'm maintaining my bank of goodwill with him.
Good.
That's the protocol.
Yep, yep.
Good.
Thank you.
So Beth, do you have some time sense of when we might get a next round, just to?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on it. I mean, as it comes in, I've just been adding content. So
I was just gonna say, the library was very eager to engage. They weren't really aware of who we were and what we were doing, and
Yeah,
they.
that's because they've never returned my call.
Well, I do have now an email correspondence with the 2 people, so I'm not sure what we want from them in terms of bringing what they have together with this inventory, but we have a line of communication at least.
Well, one thing I would say, if they have a digital record of what's in the library,
Mhm.
we could also post that digital a link to that.
you sent me a
Yes.
sort of an attachment.
Yes, it was sort of a brochure of a walking tour of what they had displayed at the library that isn't all 100% displayed now, so it's not totally up to date. So
But maybe find
Yeah.
out if they could put it on their, I don't know if they have a landing page. Maybe we could link to
continue to
that.
talk to them about that.
Because it would be nice if we could reference that.
Yes.
And I mean, I think a PDF of this could be on our landing page. It's quite it's going to be quite large.
Yeah.
So I don't think that is the end location for it, but I think once we have this in good shape, we should put it there. And
Definitely.
then another project could be, you know, the app or putting it in some other format.
Yeah.
But at least we'll have the inventory set.
Does it have to be a PDF or is there at some point? Could, you know, could we make it not, and I don't know the technical terms, but like, so that it wasn't a PDF and it was more something like you could send a link to one sculpture, you know, if somebody was interested
I
in.
think that's a great project. Once we have the inventory.
And probably,
Something we could move toward.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
There are
probably
lots of different ways
requires
to do that.
funding to do that. I mean, that would be a substantial project, I
Yeah.
think. But the nice thing about a PDF is the compression, so it's easy to be able to email it to someone or for someone to be able to.
And I can't send the PowerPoint at this point because it's
Far
just
too big.
Too large. We could separate it out into neighborhoods. I mean, that's a possibility. But the higher quality the pictures, the
Yeah.
larger it's going to be, so. But I'm open to ideas. I mean, if people have other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the inventory. I'm not gonna sign up for that other big project yet.
Well, that might be a good thing to put eventually in the email for Monty. He might, as somebody who builds
That's right,
websites
yes,
and knows how to
yes.
communicate,
Yeah.
Once
he might have
sees
an
it.
idea of
Yeah.
the best
Yeah.
way
Yeah.
to promote that. That's part of his.
Yeah. So perhaps, you know, we say by the end of January, we have a good version of what we have. And we can definitely use unknown if we don't
Yes.
know. So please, you know, for your material, just send me that if you don't have any additional information. And then we'll have a point in time inventory. And then I'm happy to keep owning it. And as we add new ones or uncover new ones, and then point in time here, Monty, here's another version as of this date.
I think that's good. I mean, a perfect project for like an intern. The city often gets, you know, interns or Ernie's idea, something like.
Mm.
Kate, did you have?
I question, if we upload all of the information in the inventory directly to like the public archive online, then we can maintain a separate list, but then we don't have to necessarily upload it to the city site. We can just have a link to the public art archive.
We could, given, having perused that though, I doubt they will. I mean, this will swamp their archive. What we have will swamp their archive. So, we'll see, but that's one solution. You know, right now, when you think they have two things from Portsmouth. And I don't know how many, Beth, 70?
70,
maybe?
we're at above 70 now.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
Okay, some updates. With Corin's help, Corin, who you all remember worked with us on the Pierce Island, and with an expert in outdoor tiling that he knew from Portland, we've been able to figure out how to repair the African burying ground. And
Wow.
we've been in touch with Jerome Meadows, the original artist, who still has some of the tiles, but the tile expert that Corin knew also knows how to source this type of tile that we had. And he pretty much said it was just not the right kind of medium in which the tiles were set for our kind of weather and for the freezing and thawing that goes on. But he does a lot of outdoor installations. He's from Portland. He's worked with a lot of Maine artists and even was able to just explain the process of templating it and how to do it. So can't really do it until the spring, but the idea is to have all of those repairs made for Juneteenth. So they'll probably be done in May. So good progress on that front. The middle school has been making good progress. They have done a student survey of the kinds of art that the students would like to see. And so so far, what's looking like the location that they're interested in is the big wall that's in the Commons area, in the Stoffel Commons. and the students are interested in something that would be moving or interactive, that might have elements that changed or elements with light in it, something interactive. So they are starting, when I say they, it's the committee, the middle schools committee, to identify some appropriate artists. And they're thinking that what they would like to do is a commission. So they will identify an artist and do a commission. Obviously, it would come to us just for information purposes first. I checked with the deputy city manager on whether that was appropriate, and that we didn't need to do like a public competition. And she felt doing a commission under these circumstances was very appropriate, particularly since it's now under the threshold of dollars even, that would be a % for art dollars. Because remember, we raised the ceiling and lowered the floor. So they're proceeding with that. Their timeline is that they would want to have a decision made by summer, and that any installation that would occur would be occurring during summer when kids aren't there, which makes sense. So in this case, because it is a school building, it will, I think the idea is that the concept might come to us first, so that we can do as we normally do, is to do a review and maybe make some suggestions. School board would need to approve it, but then also council. So it's going to be a little,
Maybe some hurdles.
it's going to be some hurdles. But we set, ideally it would be done before summer, but no later than August, in order to move it through the process while this council is still seated. But I think they're on a good track. And they've been, Anna Nuttall has been, leading the discussion, and they've looked at slides from other schools, and they've been looking through some books of different public art, so that, they're making a good project of it. Rainbow Project, I think we agreed that next steps, we need to hear about Fleet Street.
Main Street or Vaughn Mall?
Bon Mall, right. And so we probably, the committee that's working on it really needs to connect with Peter Britz,
Yeah.
probably.
Well, it's more DPW.
DPW,
Right,
okay.
so I'll do some homework. I thought you asked that I was gonna check and see. I don't believe we have a project page up yet for major projects. We set a page in DPW. So I'm sure it's still in planning. We've had a few spikes of activity this week with the railroad that have been distracting
Oh,
people.
yeah.
Just a little.
Closing Market Street.
Yeah, if you haven't gone out, Mark, or if you haven't tried.
Tried to
Police
go
is
on
to
Bartlett
down.
today.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
It
So-
was, traffic was backed up
We-
like 2 miles.
I'm sure there will be a very detailed Vaughn Mall plan that'll be updated on a weekly basis. So until such time as that spring planning happens, I don't know what we'll really get to be able to make a plan.
I think though, what we're looking for is the feasibility of being there in the first place.
Just a
not-
broad concept.
Yeah, just
Okay.
like, can we be incorporated into that and so.
Early talk.
Yeah, so that we can begin, our committee can begin pulling in stakeholders and getting community feedback and input.
Okay.
So if that location is like verboten, we need
Right.
to know that.
Yeah. Because that would be enough to begin engaging if the answer is yes, engaging abutters in some discussions, engaging the committee that you pulled together before in further discussion.
So if you'll just start copying me on what the questions are and what the thought process is, I will navigate to find the right contacts within DPW or otherwise and see who they want to designate to work with us, please.
I'm sorry, what are you asking?
What if, I want to go to DPW and figure out who best to speak to and who would like to engage
Okay,
with us, but I'm not inside of the details of what we're.
Yeah, so maybe framing a paragraph about it or framing some questions that Sean can send on to them.
okay. Do the three of us want to? Sure. I'll start a thread. Start an email thread. Okay.
Meeting dates for next year. I hope you all had a chance to look at those and there aren't any that said, oh my God, we can't possibly do that day.
Did you send them all to me?
I just have two on this.
We have two.
Meeting dates.
Oh,
Oh,
in the agenda itself.
oh, up there, okay.
So yes, you did.
So hearing nothing, I'll assume those are our dates and we can get them calendarized. Just as a heads up, an interesting thing, PMAC has been asked by Novacure to manage for them a public art project downtown on, the Novacure is the building that we all knew as the Whale Wall Building, the new building. And as part of their approval, I remember that they were to do a public art piece that was part of the HDC and planning board discussion with them. And so they've asked PMAC if they would manage that process for them. And because that's not the kind of thing PMAC has ever done before, they have contacted Nancy and I and Kate are going to have a talk with them on Friday morning, just indicating what are the approvals, who are some artists you might look to, et cetera. And it sounds like it's the kind of thing where they want to, that Novacure wants to engage children in the process. So that identifies some particular artists who might be, who might be particularly good at that. And whether they want to create whales again or not, that would not be my choice, but we'll see. Lenny, it looks like you have a question.
No, I was just, when you said engage children and, you know, kind of,
Things come up.
yes.
Yeah.
off the top.
So that, of course, that project will eventually come to us because that's HDC. So we'll have to make a recommendation to HDC for that. And then the only other thing, and Kate, you might want to talk about this, the volunteer board training that is coming up that will affect all of us.
Sure. So we have a proposal in front of the city council for a new training manual for all volunteers for the city. And it's going to be in modules. So what will happen is everyone will have a login. They'll go into the city. It's through our HR department. They'll go into the city and you'll have a handbook to read. And then you'll have all of the relevant policies for the city and ordinances related to volunteers. You'll go through and read and kind of check off that you've read them. And in addition to that, there will be an opportunity to have videos from the city. We're still working to develop those right now. It'll start with the handbook and kind of going through all the policies and procedures. But then there will be videos to watch as well on things like the right to know law in the state of New Hampshire and how to work in a committee with a chair. So it's just making sure all of our committees are kind of up to speed on that. It's interesting. Some of this originated out of establishing like this committee and the Arts and Cultural Commission, because we had a lot of people who hadn't served on city boards before, and it's hard to know what the procedures are because they weren't written down. So we've tried to provide that guidance for future committees. So I'd love to have feedback on that if anybody feels that they can provide it after going through that process.
So what timing likely when we would be asked to do that? When will people be doing that? Do you have a sense?
If the council approves it on January 6th, I would expect it to go live by end of January or early February.
Okay.
We do the modules like at home, at our own pace.
Yes. So you should be able to log into the system and do the training. And it's the same system we use for staff. So yeah,
Very easy to use.
Okay, good.
And will everybody, all volunteers need to sign off on it that they
yes, basically that you've read, the materials. In future, what will happen is any new volunteer, committee member will have to do that before they can be seated on their committee. That way everybody's aware of all of the laws in the state, but also just how to have a functioning committee.
And I don't want anybody to be scared off by it.
No, no, it's really, the goal was to provide the answers to all the questions that we get asked all
Right.
the time. Because we realized we weren't providing that to our volunteers, and people would be 3 or 4 meetings in and they'd say, but what is the right to know law? I don't understand. What is the procedure on sending email? And so we want to make sure that that's really clear upfront.
All right. So let me set the stage for what Kristen's presentation is going to be. And then Kristen, feel free to add to this, and Sean in the stage setting, feel free to add. Kristen is proposing a work of art for a city-owned wall. But it's a little bit complicated because that wall abuts property that is now before our city boards for redevelopment. So if you looked at the wall across from the Foundry Garage, the old Heineman called the Heineman Building, on top of the wall and back towards Hanover Street, is before planning, HDC, and Board of Adjustment.
I think it was last night, it was before the Board of Adjustment, so it's making its way, it has to go to TAC. And eventually planning others, so it's in the process.
And it's a complicated project because they're proposing 4 buildings on that site where there is 1 building now. So the city owns that retaining wall, and the city also owns the strip of land essentially on top of the wall, if you want to think of it like that. And there is discussion with the developer who would like to purchase that strip of land. The city may want to retain it for different reasons. So that's in the legal department while they work their way through these other boards. So we can't know how some of that's going to come out, but Kristen's proposal is to paint that wall. We also know that DPW may want some repairs to the wall, and also during construction, of course, there may be some damage. So the timing of all this is quite up in the air, but tonight we're looking at the art part and to make ready for whatever comes, right? So given all of these players, there's the possibility that this could become part of a site improvement. It could become part of something that the developer may help to support. So what I would suggest tonight is that we not worry about the money part, we not worry about timing, but we talk about the concept and we give our review of the concept as well as suggestions we have for improvements, as we typically would discuss that. And we write that up as we do in a memo, but we're then ready to present that memo when the time is right, as some of these other things get sorted out. As you might imagine, there's been a fair amount of neighborhood opposition, because of course that neighborhood is getting very dense, and that's part of this concept. So it may take a while to work these things out. Sean, is there anything else you want to?
No, that covers kind of the backdrop.
That's the backdrop. Yeah. So, do people have questions about that? What I just said, or no?
So is there any possibility in the redevelopment of the Heineman building that wall would be taken down?
You have to put a wall there, or everything will come tumbling down. So that some kind of wall, it's 108 feet, as you read, needs to continue, because that wall also abuts other, it's a continuous wall, but there are different parcels
Right.
that abut that wall. So it's a complicated site. Yeah,
I
Mara.
mean, I'm sure this isn't really relevant to anyone else, but when I walked over there to look at Chris's mural and also the photographs on the Foundry Garage, I was really blown away because I'm really ashamed to admit that I have not been there since it's been as developed as it was. And I really had to pinch myself and think, now, wait a minute, am I walking down the street in some other town, like south of us that I won't name? I mean, it was quite alarming, in fact, to feel how, I don't know. I mean, maybe not
Developments.
bad, but it got my
It's changed
attention.
dramatically quickly.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
Talking about
Robin.
The
I just
development,
have-
all the
Yes,
buildings.
and all that
Yeah.
development, I hadn't seen it maybe for a couple of years and
Oh.
it was gobsmacking.
Yeah.
I just have kind of a personal question for Kristen. Does she live in that area? Is that why that wall is attractive? I was just kind of curious.
Well, why don't we invite her up?
Yeah.
Kristen, come up. And yes, and introduce your interpreter as well.
I don't live in the area, but I painted a mural at 191 Hill Street.
Right.
So while I was doing that one, I noticed the wall and just the idea of just putting up pollinator plants and enlarged beautiful wildflowers and native plants just seemed like an answer to all of the development around and everything that's happening. But I had no idea about the way that everything is, how complicated and staying with the city, but
So let me ask you, do you have any questions about what I said before you start to present about the background of it?
maybe. Well, I know that I noticed cracks in that wall, so I was wondering about whether they would need to actually fix things.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it just sounds like we have to wait and see anyway, pretty much, right?
And Kristen, would you introduce yourself to us?
My name is Kiernan, Knuts the KJ, I'm the interpreter.
And she will be coming behind us as we ask questions. So, Jen. Yeah.
You catch up? I wanted to know, and I might have missed it, how did you come about to paint the one on Hill Street?
Okay, actually, my husband works with Dave Adams, so they do historical carpentry
Mhm.
together, and so that's how I met him. That's how I met Dave Adams, and then he was feeling similar to me about all of the development and everything, and so he wanted his building to have a voice, to say something. So I was really excited to paint a mural outside because I had just done a fresco inside a private home before that, and I'm really hoping to do more murals. So he was excited about having something there and an answer to all of that development.
Yep.
So
It's a really fabulous mural. The mural on Hill Street is really a wonderful treatment of this, of that space, the fact that there's that view that opens up and you kind of like then are connected to the water, to flowers, and then the water really, works really well.
So,
Thank you. Yeah.
Kristen, we'd like to hear from you about, people have read what you sent, but also for you to make some remarks about it. We should ask questions then to clarify. And then Jen and Mara can lead us through criteria that we use to develop a statement that can be used for the city council later. Because the city, no matter what happens with development, the city owns the wall. So a next step from us will be to go to city council. So however you'd like to present, whatever you'd like to say about the project.
All right, okay. I
There's
guess
one.
you can
There
see
it
the
is.
wall up there.
Yeah, make it bigger.
Okay. I'm not sure exactly what to. I'm gonna,
Would you prefer for
Yeah,
us
if
to
you
ask
wanna-
questions?
maybe if you ask me questions, because I'd love to answer questions,
Okay.
but, unless you want me to just give an intro to myself.
I think that would be helpful
How-
to do, because remember,
Mhm.
remember we're recording this, and so people who haven't read this won't know about you or won't know about your idea.
Oh, they haven't. Okay.
We have, but people who
Yeah.
will listen
Not
to this
everyone's read
recording,
it.
this group
They
has.
ha- Okay. Yeah, okay. Okay.
Because it's on the website, the meeting's on the website, so anybody, the public can
Yeah.
access it.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Okay. So I've been working in the Portsmouth area doing house painting, and I've started doing murals because I also sell my art locally and do small paintings. And I write books too. So I do a lot of different multi-art projects. So, but I really want my company, Flying Owl Painting, that I started a year and a half ago, to be focused on murals, and I want to do more public art. So just being here is really helpful and exciting to kind of hear how to see how everyone communicates and everything you guys talk about. And so I don't know, I guess, yeah, well, okay.
There's the wall.
One thing to add would probably be that I focus on wildlife and nature art because I feel like everything in the world is just building and buildings, and I don't know. I think humans really have to remember what the land we live on should look like if there was nothing. And so that's why the pollinator idea was really something that I thought was important for towns or cities. Because if people see that and they think, oh, I could just plant a small thing on my porch, and then that will help butterflies and other wildlife be able to help the ecosystem and all of that. So I am hoping that a lot of my art projects in the future revolve around that sort of thing. And I was excited about the other things you guys were talking about with school art or any of that. So I live close to Portsmouth. So I've been in this, I went to UNH. So I graduated in 2001, so a long time ago. I've been traveling and then kind of always coming back to New Hampshire. So
So one thing to
that was
point
the
out,
grid. So yeah, that was my sketch of the wall.
yeah, in that picture,
Picture.
Sean, if people can see the weeds that are on top, it's that strip of land, which I'm gonna say is like maybe 10 feet wide. That, is like grass and weeds right now. And I listened to the
Which
TAC
way?
discussion
Above the wall.
above the
That's
wall.
parking lot right now. But I think HDC was discussing.
They
what it would
wanna-
turn into. Is that what might get sold?
Yes, and they
Or-
want to make that strip
Okay,
like grass or natural. The plan for the new development
wow.
has a natural strip there. So there is the potential
That's
that
what
that
I
could
was
be a
thinking it would join
planted
together.
Like
Uh,
pollinator.
pollinator
Yeah.
Yeah,
garden
that's cool.
on top.
Yeah.
So tell us about the sketches that we see there.
Oh, to describe the sketch? Yeah, basically I was seeing it as a way of going through the seasonal changes by starting with spring, going through summer. So summer would have a lot of sunflowers in the very middle and then smaller flowers on the sides. leading up and then going away to autumn, where there would be a few plants in the autumn section. I was using the signpost and the lamppost as kind of natural, but I don't know if that will end up changing, I'm guessing, and I don't know. So that was the idea of doing that, and then having, I love the idea of that being right on the edge of that park. And there's so many people that I've seen walking over there, so I hope that something can get done there, even if it changes hands or however. But yeah, I brought those paintings in. I don't know if I should hold them up, do you guys, do you want me to show you? They're right there, anyway. So it's okay.
Sure.
But yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
I don't know. Okay. Let's see. Yeah. I just figured a physical way to show you what my
Yes.
process was,
Yeah.
and paintings that. And that was the I always forget the name of this butterfly, the blue butterfly that was
Oh, the
Carner or
Carner.
Kramer. You can move it a little bit. I think I say that above the picture there. Yeah,
Yep.
Carner. That was endangered, or it still is, I think. But in Concord, they actually have a whole field of lupines that they added to try to bring them back. So that's why I was excited to paint that. And then these are the other two, the hummingbird and the coral honeysuckle. So this is part of my process for imagining the wall.
Would those be about the same size on the wall? Is
I
that
was thinking the wall would be bigger.
would be bigger?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking like enlarging them so that people could actually see the plants better and actually see all the tiny little details. And because a lot of people are walking from across the street looking, so I thought the bigger, the better. But I would basically do calculations to make sure I'm enlarging everything in the same perspective
Mhm.
so that it would flow.
Is there a possibility of doing the entirety of the wall? It looks like this section is limited and it doesn't complete the remainder of the concrete section of the wall.
Is that just summer?
It might be. That's what I'm trying to
That's
figure
just
out.
as far as I got with the preparation sketch.
Okay, all right.
Because Sean was saying that I didn't have to do the entire wall.
Okay.
Photoshopped it.
But the
So-
idea is
Not
that
Sean.
the
But I
plan
mean
would
for
be
the
to do
whole
the whole.
thing.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
I was studying the way that, because those bricks are some kind of weird substance, I'm not sure what they're made out of. But I wouldn't paint that. So, and they start again. So that wall is just 108 feet, and then, yeah, the bricks start again and around the other side. So,
Is that section of the wall that you indicate is painted? Is that also brick or is that a smooth surface? I haven't walked by that wall.
Surface.
it's rough concrete, basically similar to what I just did on it when I do on Hill Street. It feels like about the same kind of substance, like concrete, there's cracks in it and graffiti right now, so I thought that could also hide the graffiti. Maybe it would dissuade people from putting more graffiti, I don't know, but yeah.
Other questions?
Sean, could you go show us the whole wall up at the beginning?
This one.
No, I think you had, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can see the edges
Yeah.
on that one.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Sure.
So it's different. Yeah. And also, I guess the intention is that there'd be a sidewalk in front of it, right? There's partial sidewalk there now.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a partial here.
I think the side of the wall, where that corner is metal or something before it turns into the brick that
Okay.
they put in.
It's really a mess.
It's.
Oh, oh, yeah.
Question, and this involves Kristen and maybe Sean and Chris. Is there a possibility of doing this like as a temporary measure, because this is going to be developed anyways, but it would bring some beauty to this area while we're waiting for all of this to go through? Because it sounds like it might be a long process.
Interesting question.
Like on wood frames or something?
Or I don't know. Well, no, I'm just saying that would, if something happened and this was temporary, it just was here until the developer came in and he or she may or may not keep it, would that be okay with you? Would you be comfortable with being temporary if this works out?
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of something that could be moved, because I paint on wood panels all the time.
Okay.
And so possibly even something like that. But I would be willing to do it temporarily too. I mean, I understand that if it could get developed, maybe that would help it not get developed. So I don't know if my mural could help save that wall and then influence people to plant the garden above it and the pollinator plants above it, then that might be. I
Or
would be totally into that.
maybe there would be a small demonstration part, the labor to do the entire wall would be a lot.
Right,
But
exactly.
maybe your idea could be a small section.
Sure. And that it could grow as we get more information about what's going on.
Good idea.
Oh, that's true. I could do, I mean, just the painting the wall, even just the backgrounds and adding flowers even there over time or something too, as a smaller stage project even.
More
I
idea.
know you said this before, but what is the time frame for develop, or is that
Well, it's gonna be a moving target.
It's gonna be,
so it could be.
There's no form, it's, yeah, I mean, it's gotta go through the land use boards and eventually whatever
so-
that back and forth is, which can be pretty substantial. So there's not a clock that says you have to start here and it's ready to go
Right.
in 3 weeks or 6 weeks, or it's really up. My experience has been a lot of back and forth
Yeah.
to get to this place of everything's approved, everything works within the zone, it meets the ordinances, and it's, and the developer is getting what they need.
Yeah.
So,
What is the
yeah.
It's just a very vocal neighborhood. I'm part of that neighborhood and it's very vocal. So there's a lot of pushback on that, trying to make it not look like the buildings next to it. So I know that that has been a sore subject with a lot of people. So I think that's one of the big holdups, because the neighborhood has a lot of pushback.
Not about this, does the neighborhood?
No,
know
no,
about
no.
this mural project?
No, it has nothing to do with that.
Okay.
It's all about the development of that and the
Okay.
time. She was asking about the timeline, and it's
Sure.
all about the timeline.
Kate and then Lenny.
And I was gonna remind everyone that even after they get all their approvals, sometimes then they have 2 years to break ground.
Sure.
So it can be 2 years and they might even ask for an extension. And that's what we've seen in the city. And a lot of that area is
Yeah.
projects were approved years ago that are just now. going forward.
Yeah.
So it can take a long time.
But one thing to remember is, look at where the brick ends there. The rest of that wall is part of this neighborhood that is rapidly getting finished. So it's one of those things where it's like part of the wall is going to be related to this new neighborhood, and part of the wall is going to be waiting this next project. I mean, that also adds to the complicated part of it, because the wall is not only along the project that we're talking about under development, but it also goes further.
Mhm.
So Lenny,
Oh, what was my question? Oh, yeah. Do we know what those buildings are gonna end up being used as? Like, are they commercial, residential?
residential.
residential, all
Residential.
residential.
I have a question about the preparation of the wall, or you might even answer it with the preparation you did on the Hill Street building, because one of our concerns is always stability. And we know that like the whale wall that started to fail fairly quickly because the surface wasn't prepared. How would you prepare the wall itself?
I'm not sure what happened with the whale wall. I feel like I don't know if it was a choice what he used for paint, or if the city didn't follow what Wyland told them to do. But I
He-
mean, it lasted almost 30 years.
It did.
I thought,
It did.
which
Now-
was kind of the life of a mirror.
Yeah.
It's probably a 20 to 30 year kind of thing. So I don't know that. But the paint that I'm using, so the paint that I'm using that I would use is called Benjamin Moore Floor and Patio, and that's what I used for the Hill Street. And that's supposed to be amazing it's for floors, it's for concrete like walkways. It's meant to be like walked on and treaded on, and it's really hardcore paint. I'm not sure if all muralists even think to use that kind of a really hard paint. So I feel like that's something that my paint guy told me about and said, this would be amazing for that kind of surface. So it's more from my knowledge through painting and house painting that I think it would be a more durable surface. So, yeah.
I have a question, and I love the concept of the seasons and the natural. I
Mhm.
think that's wonderful. And this is more a question in general, where it's a city project. Is there any like precedent that we should put that out, like put out an RFP, or is like, my experience is more with when a private funding for public art where you don't need to do that, but where it's a city project, city funded and city property. I mean, do we not have to?
I
do
don't
that?
think there's any precedent for that. I think it's a good question. I don't think there's any precedent for it. I would say my closest thing to that is what I just told you about Suzanne Woodland's advice that we don't have to do that for the middle school, and that's purely city funding.
Mhm.
This is not necessarily city funding, city property. Yes. So I think I can't think of an example in the city where that has happened, where somebody has come forth and said, here's an idea and I'll do this for your city property. I suppose you could say in some ways the codfish was a little like that because that was a city property, and Portsmouth 400 essentially has the idea of we'll do this codfish. It's similar.
Yeah, it wasn't city funding.
There was one time, this was years ago, overnight art was city property.
Yes, those were
But those were,
competitions.
those were competitions and it was temporary.
Temporary.
So, but you bring up a good point, Robin, in that, do you come with any kind of funding for this? Or,
Not
Yeah,
yet,
okay.
but I did assume that I might need to fundraise if the city wasn't able to
Yeah.
cover everything, or however it worked out. I have a lot of ideas.
yeah, because I'm thinking
Oh.
along your idea, Robin, if we're looking at a years long process, it might be something that the developer pays for as a gift to the neighborhood. Well, there
Right.
is,
Right.
Right.
It's all,
They're really
it's also possible that it becomes
now there's an idea.
Are
that
you
it's
listening?
site mitigation, that it becomes a requirement of the project. That's another possibility.
I just wanted everyone to know that we did raise the limits for RFPs to anything under $50,000. We just do a regular call out for
That's
supplies
helpful.
now. So rather than actually issuing an RFP, because the RFP process is so extensive anyway, and we had very few projects that came in under 50,000 that we were doing that for.
So request for proposal.
Yeah.
So that what Kate's saying in general in the city for any procurement, they don't have to do an RFP below 50,000. So that really helps with your question.
I'm still a little bit confused because I was kind of with Bernie wondering, like if it's a city-owned property, shouldn't there be opportunities for other people to propose? And then listening to you, Kate, sounds like because it's under a certain dollar amount, that there is a need for a call for art? or-
No.
No, no, there's
No,
no
there isn't.
requirement under $50,000.
Like Chris said, we're not doing it for the middle school, and that's a city-owned building.
But is not the middle school have its own committee that they're looking at different artists that they're gonna propose, like?
Right, but they're thinking of doing a commission, not a competition. I think that was the question.
But not to digress, sorry, as the middle school looks at who they're gonna choose, I mean, they will look at more than one person, will they not?
I don't know. I mean, it really, I think the point is, it's not a requirement. It's not a requirement. But, that's not to say also that, if this would go to the council, and of course, any discussion that our memo goes to the council could say that too. So remember, our job is not to decide whether there should be a competition or not, to review what's in front of us, what comes to us, and describe its pluses and minuses and any recommendations we have for changes, et cetera.
I do think I understand where you're coming from, though, where you're saying it, if we do some projects that are an open call, shouldn't all why wouldn't all projects be
That's a
an
good-
open call? The way I'm looking at it is this wasn't our idea and it's not connected to any city policy. It's coming from the community. And so the way I'm looking at it is, well, then we can be creative in the funding and maybe it wouldn't be publicly funded, in which case all we need is approval to have something
That's
on
right.
on the city property. It's different if the city and the taxpayer is funding it.
Right.
I think.
Think of it just like the Mark McNabb projects that Terrence gave to us. We reviewed those. We're not funding them or competing them. We reviewed those as part of our process and sent it on to HDC.
That's when I read the proposal, which we got, today or yesterday, that we got that one. Yesterday, when I saw the dollar amount, I thought it was, the monies that come from the city that would be. paid for.
No, that's the question that was just asked.
Yeah, that's why I started to understand it better.
Yeah. So, Beth,
I was wondering when we do the memo, this idea that we could explore a little further about a temporary element. That sounds
Yes.
really exciting because it's so ugly now. And it would, if we could create something. I mean, how would we proceed with that?
I'm gonna have a question for Counselor Cook, like, I would love to have some conversations with the other parties involved in the city before making a recommendation to city council.
right,
I think that's fair.
yeah,
Because these are the folks who maintain it and are working through the development project and are working through DPW and taking care of our city. And there may be some common ground there that
that's right.
wouldn't require. I would just like to,
Right.
on behalf of my colleagues, open up a dialogue.
And a temporary element could also be used as a fundraiser or as a proof of concept or whatever you want to think of it.
Oh, I think that's a great idea.
Okay,
I should note, I think that it's really important to have these internal conversations with the city staff, and because if we're not expending taxpayer dollars on this, I don't read the ordinance as saying then the city council has to review it. We can accept it, but it's not the same process. It would be like a recommendation and will you accept this rather than, and it would come from Park, though, through the staff and it would just be a different process altogether.
Right.
And if DPW is already planning to do improvements there, it becomes
Sure.
the,
That's why I say there may
becomes
be.
part
the
of the
different
process.
discussion. Yeah.
So I think it would be good, understanding that the criteria a little different, that we're reviewing it in concept because of all these things. I still think we should kind of go through our criteria and sort of, that will help us maybe identify any other recommendations we'd want to give or questions that we might have. Yeah. Jen.
I do have one last question. And was any thought given to tying the whole wall into something? Because right now it's just parts of it. And when you see the corner and when you're coming through that neighborhood, that corner right there, it's part of the wall. So,
Interesting.
so is there any and parts of it, because the other part is brick like that. Is there any tying it all together just, or is there any concept or people thinking that, again, this might be aesthetics, what looks kind of, it's here, but what about the rest of it? So how does it all tie into this whole thing?
That's winter. That's the winter season. No, but
Just
you
put
make
snow
a-
on.
That's an interesting point, Kristen. Did you think about that part?
I wasn't sure that the brick on that side of the wall could be painted on. It looked like it was
Okay.
almost a plastic kind of brick. I don't even know what it's made out of.
I haven't
That's
touched
what I
it.
was thinking, but I mean, I've thought of doing wooden panels that are held up like in a garden, like a sculpture, but a painting of a plant or something or an animal.
Mhm.
So I mean, I would love to, I could do anything, and that little area could have like an animal or
Mhm.
something inside of the foliage and things like that, and that would be right across from the park.
Right.
So it would be something cute for kids or for people to see from there. Even the type of art things where you can put your face in something something cute like that. I mean, I don't know.
So tie it
That could be a way
together.
to tie it in,
but
like a
not with-
sunflower. I don't know.
When we look at the other samples of art that you've done, like not on the wall, but you showed samples.
Yeah, if you
There are
keep
other work that you've done, like murals in the bathrooms.
the next page, I think, yeah,
Oh, here we go.
There's the,
the Hill Street.
This inside or
What?
this picture is it inside or outside?
That's outside. That was part of the, that's a
Right there.
close-up.
Oh, okay.
So you could see that that's the Portsmouth gondola. And I got, there was boats on the horizon. I was really excited because that paint is like for floors and for, patios and things, but it was allowing me to get really fine detail. So it was exciting. This was the fresco that I painted. So that was on wet lime plaster. So the paint is sucked into the wall and it becomes forever part of the wall. You can't get it off. So it was exciting that someone wanted that in their bathroom. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. That's another just smaller painting I did of sunflowers. And then that's my favorite painting. That's why I called my business Flying Owl Painting. I see barred owls a lot and I just love them so much. I love painting in that kind of way where I can paint something that makes you look like it's flying at you or something like that. So I would love to do that anywhere else in Portsmouth. There's one other thing, can I mention? You guys were talking about Novacure. I actually put a whole proposal together for them that I haven't contacted them yet, though. I'm not sure like who to contact, so I was gonna wait and look into it. But I was actually thinking of asking them if they would want a Rufus Porter kind of style landscape with the sunset and the life-saving station that's out in the harbor
Mhm.
and the lighthouse there. I forget the name of the lighthouse that's right in Portsmouth Harbor.
Would,
Whaleback.
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 I
Whaleback.
think Whaleback, yes, it's, yeah. So I thought that that might be something that could connect with their business a little bit, but also Rufus Porter's someone that was painting a lot of indoor murals in this area a long time ago, so that would be a historical connection. So I'm not sure if that will work, but I guess it sounds like I could ask them that you guys would want something, them to put something up there for the public art, I guess, right?
Apparently that's their plan. Yeah, so,
Yeah,
so
let's see.
let's talk about the criteria. Jen, do you want to?
Yep.
Sing the first part.
Yeah, the first part, we have, if you're looking at this one, just the first part escaped. It
Okay.
is, we're talking about the site, and I think that's pretty obvious right now that we're talking about a specific availability of that appropriate site. So I'm not sure that we have to spend a lot of time on
Right.
that. The only thing of that, there was the accessibility. I think it's about as accessible as anything in the city is. The safety and liability, I'm not sure based on what we're looking at, there's really any safety and liability issues. If anyone disagrees, please step in, because I just want to kind of keep this moving along. The traffic patterns, I don't think this is going to affect it, except people are going to stop and go, wow. And that's probably about it. The current conditions, this is where we really have to be very specific on the current conditions and the product specific requirements. Because again, I think talking with DPW and finding out exactly what's the condition of the wall, are they going to replace it, what kinds of things they have to do. I think that's a huge part of this project, because there's no way it can be painted until those things are addressed or taken care of. Even if it was with wooden, even if we did a temporary thing, we'd still have to figure out how to make that wall work. And especially if it was on wood, how would that be attached? All those kinds of things, and find out at that point if they'd have to take it down because they're going to fix the wall, what's going to happen during the construction. So that, I think the key element on the site is of those last two.
I would also add the point that you brought up before of thinking of the corner
Yes,
and how the corner is going to be integrated into whatever goes there.
yes. Because that, again, it's part of the wall. Then the next part is about the feasibility. We've already gotten the budget. Project completion, we can just kind of giggle at that one, because that's just we have no idea what the time is going to be for that. The schedules, again, the technical feasibility, I think we've talked a little bit about that with the paint. I don't know, does anybody have any questions on the paint? Or I think you would even propose what you're going to cover it with to make sure that it's graffiti proof, because that's usually a question that we bring up.
Yeah.
Any other questions on the technical feasibility?
I was pleased to see that, and something that we more recently learned from the DeBari people is they have decided to also use an anti-graffiti covering on the Pierce Island, because we convinced them, I think, that it's going to be out there by itself. And so I think it's something that's important for us to maybe even at some point add into our guidelines, just to, and we understand from them that obviously it doesn't prevent graffiti, makes it easy to wash it right off.
We can add that as a line. Again, we've talked about that. The durability, again, it comes back to what's the condition of the wall right now?
Yeah.
And those kinds of things. And for the durability, are we proposing the temporary version of this, or are we going to propose a long-term? And again, you said about 30 years. Who knows what's going to happen between 30 years, but if it's got the lifespan of about 30 years, I think that's probably, we can address that and say that as part of our proposal. I know I went pretty quickly, but does anybody have anything on those two?
Well, I think the last point is interesting, Jen, and that these things aren't meant to last forever, all of them. And so we would say with something like this that we would expect it to have a life, rather than that it would be something that would, like all murals do. I think Chris said that, so that we wouldn't expect it to be something like the whale wall that you just let deteriorate, but you say it has a life, and it's time to paint it over at some point in time.
Anything else on those? Again, I apologize for going rather quickly.
No, I think that's good.
I guess before we do the next part, I guess a question that I have about the feasibility that just sticks in my head is that because it's because the fate of the site is so very uncertain, is that an issue to discuss when we talk about feasibility, or is it just, we'll just assume that something will work out and
Well, I mean,
More information.
I guess we all assume that the site is gonna change somehow, hopefully for the better. So I don't know, from a languaging standpoint, would we look and say, assuming a feasible canvas or a feasible location that
Yeah.
that is in good repair,
Yeah.
then, I think that's almost an ante to get in the game. Like, it has to be.
Yeah.
We don't want to go through this and with not the structural repairs done.
That's
So I
right.
feel like the city has an obligation to make sure that that wall or the developer's wall or whoever wall it is structurally sound. Right? So I feel like that's
Gonna happen whether we were
Whether-
talking about a mural or
that's
not,
right.
right?
That's right. That's right.
Right.
Because nobody wants a falling wall.
so it's going to be feasible, because if it's not, the wall's gonna fall and we
I
don't
think
have
so.
anything.
Yeah.
So it's almost like when feasible.
Yes,
This can be
when. There you
entertained,
go.
right?
There's the language.
That's good.
Better stated.
Okay, so I guess then we can talk about the aesthetics. Aesthetic elements of texture, blah, 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 shape, line, form, color, function to create a cohesive whole. And in terms of the concept, summer, fall, winter, spring, flowers, pollinator, magnets, that's a unified concept. Innovation, imagination. It's, it is, it's, I mean, you can say that, taking living nature and putting it into a kind of barren environment
Mhm.
is a good thing. It's innovative, so appropriate to the site. Yeah, it's, what's currently there is a pretty horrendous blank wall, so having it flower is a good thing. Coherence. Okay, there's a good concept of flowers and growth for the season. I mean, please interrupt.
Well, I wonder what people think of. It occurred to me that in some ways, this is as much about the science and nature as about the art, and what would you think about actual labels of, asters, ex-hummingbird? I mean, because there's an educative function to it. Do you think that takes away from it, or would you see labels there, just like you see labels on trees that tell you what species?
Right, and if you're like, say, in a botanical garden,
Right.
you see these.
But could it be like in a garden where it doesn't have to be painted on the mural, but just, I mean, kind of a nice play if you had it stuck in the little bit of ground in front of the wall.
That's kind of cute.
It is, but durability, I question the durability of that. Especially with snowplows. We forget that we don't live in an environment that would have year round.
It could be sort of collaged, and if you had the mural on a flat surface, and then you had the labels,
Yeah, well, that,
attached to the mural, but projecting out.
Sticking out a little.
Yeah, there could be different ways.
Or you could paint them in a kind of Trompe-l'oeil kind of
Yeah.
way, so that they are as if they are, they're painted, but they're as if they were labels put near the flowers or plaques or something like that. I mean, I pictured,
Well,
like, what?
we can make suggestions.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kristen.
I had thought of that already. I was kind of thinking of like a plaque, or something maybe around the corner. Where that corner was, you could even have something that's movable, but a plaque that could list all of the
Sure.
pollinators and they're connecting plants from maybe from one end of the wall to the other. That
Sure.
way it would encourage people to walk over and read that and then go and look. And that way it wouldn't detract
Yeah.
from
Visual.
the art itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, not have like writing on the wall exactly. I mean, I love poetry too, so part of me was like, maybe I can write poetry here and then, well, but so.
The education component, I think, is really important around the
Yeah.
pollinators. I love that idea.
I love it too, because there are a lot of children at the park and, I just know my little one, that he went through a certain developmental stage where we would have had to have walked by that mural if it had labels on it. And we would have had to read every label.
And
that would have
match.
been, that would have been our routine, for 6 months.
It's kind of like in Denver, how we did, like
Yes.
the themes and then Ellen did the descriptions and we put it on the plaque. So I don't know if you've seen, Kristen, Endeavor in the Bohenko Gateway Park. It's Sija Chen's stainless steel, the gondola
Oh.
sails.
Thanks.
It has 13 themes
I
in it.
need to go look, I don't know.
Yeah, and, but there's a big plaque
Mm.
that describes, I mean, it wasn't cheap.
But a painted plaque.
Yeah,
You know,
wouldn't be a
but,
painted plaque.
yeah.
would be- Are you gonna
I've
try and
done
get the-
signage.
Okay, so I mean, so are we suggesting that there be some kind of interpretive element
Some interpretive
work.
element.
that makes it,
Particularly if they're plants and species that are, native to New England or perhaps are endangered or,
yeah, that's really good.
educated.
It's a good thing. Okay, so and the use of materials, traditional, innovative, I it sounds good. I mean, I think they're traditional, innovative, ethically and responsibly sourced. I mean, this is all not relevant. Interact positively with existing materials on site. Nah. I mean, okay. Right, and then artist experience and history, I guess, is the other part that we want to consider. The artist should provide convincing evidence of the ability to successfully complete a project demonstrated by previously executed and installed artworks. And I mean, clearly you have, but how, I mean, I guess a question that I have is, this is really, this is big. Yeah. This is a very big expansive wall. And, I just wondered how I wondered how you felt about having to execute something so large.
Actually, it feels easier than the 191 Hill Street because of all the scaffolding I had to use after climbing up and down scaffolding and working on a huge surface like that. This is longer, so it's bigger in that sense, but I will only need a step ladder. Just so the access is very easy for a painter that I've done things on the ground, I've done things on the ceiling. And so it's not a ceiling, it's not, I don't have to be on my knees exactly. So for me, that it would be amazing to spend weeks painting this and just planning it out, and all of that would be so exciting. So I definitely feel qualified and ready.
To be, yeah, right.
How long did it take you to do the Hill Street project?
Good question.
That was like part-time painting almost, because I was doing other projects. So that took from late August to early October.
Okay.
But it was dependent on weather.
Sure.
So that kind of gives my body a break. If it's raining one day, then I have to just switch gears and do something else. So I was estimating that would take probably a month or two to actually get through the whole wall, depending on perfect weather conditions each day and all of that. So that would make it easy, just being able to do it piece by piece. So,
Okay, and I mean, installation experience, you just spoke about that. The artist, you're not thinking of a team or anything like that, a team, other people to help you with it?
I'm alone, but I would have someone help if I thought I needed to. I definitely know other artists and other people I could have to just paint in the lines or something like some muralists sometimes have that. If there was a rush to it, but it felt like it's the kind of project that wouldn't be rushed.
Right.
Because there's not really anything in the way of it. There's nothing for me to work around if it's just the weather. So I think I wouldn't be anyone's way. So I would be happy to do it myself.
Yeah, okay. Does anyone have any other questions? Yeah, Lenny?
Lenny,
Wondered, addressing that question about working with someone else, if you were open to it, or you thought it would either inhibit your artwork or perhaps complement your artwork, if there would be an opportunity for either middle school students or high school students who are studying biology and the environment to kind of workshop with you, or is that something that you're open to or interested in?
Yeah, I would be interested in that. I would be totally willing to work with. I did a 3-week long project for primary school kids in Ireland with a previous an old friend, and basically we taught mural painting and had the kids paint the wall right next to their primary school. I mean, for this, I have kind of a very specific thing and a layout, but I wouldn't mind working with high school kids that are interested in learning how to do something like this. And yeah, it would be something to think about as far as the budget goes, as far as that goes and everything, how that would change it. Yeah.
that also though could bring some funding to it, Lenny. I think that's an excellent idea, particularly with the new trust that we have to engage students in something like that. High school, probably.
Yeah.
And it would be, I mean, I think that the naturalistic, engaging people who are interested in it from that perspective is really good. But I also think for people who are interested in, the art, artists themselves, I mean, you think about, murals traditionally being painted by workshops, Raphael didn't do every single, not every single stroke. So it's a way that people learn.
I'm not sure if the high school has an environmental club, but.
They do,
do.
they
Oh,
do.
They did.
Yeah, they do.
Okay, sounds.
They've like more than one. There's like an
Yeah.
ocean one,
No,
there's an environment,
interesting.
yeah, there's a few.
That's great.
Pick up 68 hours.
Okay.
So I think we have enough to write up the memo that we
What?
normally do and frame it within the feasibility that we talked about. So Chris, I don't know if there's anything else you would want to say, but our next part of the process would be to write up what we've talked about. We'll share it with you. And it's what Sean can use then to share with city staff as well, along with your proposal. So that would be a next step that you would get from us.
I don't think so. I think.
Okay, good.
No.
She had questions or whatnot.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Great.
Thank you for listening and everything. Okay.
So,
Chris, I'm afraid I have to leave right now.
okay.
Sorry, I have another volunteer gig that I've got to make sure I get to.
So we have just a couple more things. If people have a few more minutes to think about this,
Back or.
yeah.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas and all.
Oh, that.
If you had a chance to look at the trust, the new trust, just to, since we met last, the city council accepted the trust, the trustees of trust funds accepted the trust. The money, $100,000 is starting off the trust. And I think you could see from this that, while it's fairly clear, it's still going to be helpful to have criteria that will allow us, because we're part of it, to decide, yes, this project, no, that project, as well as for applicants to be able to figure out what they have to tell us in order to apply. So Nancy and Ernie are willing to put forth some criteria, but they thought it would be interesting to hear from any of us first if we had immediate thoughts for them as they go about that job. Or do you have questions of us that you want to pose?
I just had some thoughts after reading through it, questions I had, but you know, that I was kind of looking at it from the perspective of someone who might be interested in applying for funds and what they want to know. You know, like the size of the grants.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Good night.
Yeah, happy holidays.
Well, or even is there a, when students are mentioned, you know, we're all students in some ways. Is there a privileging of, or a weighting of, do we mean K-12 students here? Are we talking, you know, I think there's a lot of, once you start to get into it and imagine what could come forth, there are a lot of kind of questions.
I had a lot of questions. And is that just up to us to decide, you know, to kind of put something out there and then get it approved?
We're talking about the draft or that?
No, we're
No.
talking about,
Drafts, right?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it really, the idea is that we will come up with something. It's us and the director of the library, so we would come up with the draft and fly it by her and then use it, because we could be getting requests any minute now. So that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted us to be ready for, because it's an existing trust now.
Yeah.
It's been publicized, there's money there. So we need to be ready with how we're gonna make decisions, what our process is gonna be.
I did read it, but I feel like I need to reread it a few more
Yeah.
times.
I agree. I read it several times and I still
Yeah,
need to do
it's-
that.
Right, yeah, I only read it very, in a very cursory way. So I can't ask intelligent questions.
Yeah. Maybe what we can do is I'll take a little bit more time, funnel our questions to Sean to get them to the two of you, or suggestions that
Okay.
we have, because I think
That would be good.
Yeah.
I think we want to anticipate as much as we can. I mean, you can't, you know, every project that comes to us has a new wrinkle, right? But anticipate as much as we can.
Yeah.
what's ahead
All
of us.
special snowflakes, they're all so different from one
It's
another.
true.
Are you looking for this to be done for the January meeting? Do you think?
Or a start on it.
Okay,
Yeah,
so I'm guessing we probably can't.
a start on it.
Work on this
I mean,
until
enough to
after-
maybe
after we-
engage us in a
Yeah,
discussion.
Yeah,
We could get started. It depends on when we get feedback. Like, I guess it might be helpful to other people to know when we like feedback from them.
Yeah,
That would be helpful.
so
yeah.
we
Yeah.
should we should give some feedback. through
Feedback or
Dawn
suggestions.
and suggestion, and
Yeah.
then you'll Sean, you'll collate it and
Yep.
send it out.
And maybe if that could happen like by January 7th or so
Okay.
in the,
Ernie, you and I can meet and put a framework together and that incorporates whatever feedback we get. Like, we don't have to wait. I don't.
Yeah.
that's right. Right. And you know, these things take a little, it will take a couple rounds for us to
Yeah.
feel comfortable with it. But I do think, I think it is up to us. There is nobody else at this point. It's because it's an existing trust.
Yeah.
So, the projects that have come to us, like this project, the middle school project, the LGBTQ project, all have great potential to have support from this trust.
as I was walking up to the meeting, I encountered somebody who teaches at the middle school and said, oh, blah, blah, where are you going? I told her this committee and she said, oh, and they're commissioning or they're involved with art in the middle school. And I thought, yeah,
Very good.
very good, exactly.
Thing about the middle school, and Nancy knows this, that's been hanging over us for a very long time. So it would be really nice to get to see that to completion,
I agree.
because it's been years.
And that's why I think in their case, the commission is very appropriate because that'll move it along faster. Okay, so we'll do that. We'll send them to Sean and he can share with you. Two other short things. One is, I don't know if anybody has thought about the Button Project and where you think we should recommend for a relocation site, or if that's something we want to have a longer discussion about.
City doesn't want it at all.
Well, it's not that city doesn't want it, it's that it's probably not great it's not the best place for it
Yeah.
in City Hall
Yes,
chambers.
just to move it out of the city.
You had listed the library as one option. Is there, do they have a space, or was that just an idea that they might have a space for it?
That they might have a space. Before we would contact any of them, this committee should make a recommendation. And then we can contact our list and see if they're interested. So let's take that up at the next one.
Okay.
And then the real thing we need to do at our next meeting, we're obligated to do an annual report. And it's interesting, the language in the annual report and I'll start a draft on this, but I really want us to look at it at the next meeting because it's one thing to report on what we've done. That's easy. We've got all of our minutes and everything but there are 3 things that are specified in the ordinance. The first one is easy. It's an assessment of the resources available to us, the dollars. We know that. But the second and third are harder. Municipal projects that might have the need for an artist to be involved in the design.
Oh, get the
Wow.
list.
Wow.
So-
That's there.
That's there. And I was thinking, wouldn't it have been great to do that with the skate park?
Yeah.
I was
Oh,
doing some volunteer work behind the skate park last weekend, and people were talking about, really wish we had a really cool shading for the parents, because we are out there in the sun, and I was like, that is a good idea.
That's a good idea.
That'd be a great idea.
So that's one of the things. And then the second, opportunities for public art and places for public art that would advance economic opportunities. So so an annual report that includes what we've done, but then a couple really creative spaces. So we'll need to give some thought to that with the idea that maybe we can aim for a report to the council in February if we can do this in January.
And I'm sorry, in your last statement, did you say look for more spaces for creative art? Is that what you said?
Opportunities for public art that would advance economic opportunities.
There's a part 2 that said look for creative spaces. No,
No,
I misheard that. Okay.
no, but it would, think of the Hearth, that the art there attracts people to that area. So that kind of economic opportunity, people gathering sort of.
So here's something, I don't know if this is what you're thinking. I was in some Scandinavian smaller city, Aarhus maybe. And they had little sculptures that guided you along an art walk.
Cool.
They were little ducks, and the ducks were all a little bit different, but when you saw the duck and what direction the duck was pointing, you knew to walk in that direction to see, and then the next piece, another duck would be, and it would you would follow around. And I would imagine, because we went there to see that brings economic opportunity, because
Sure.
of course we had lunch.
Well, and I'm thinking a good example is what Terrence presented to us, what they're doing in those alleyways and trying to, use art to draw people down to see to go into a store,
Yeah,
that sort of
yeah.
thing. Right. Okay,
I know when we were drafting this ordinance, part of this, the Arts and Nonprofits Blue Ribbon Committee was also working on the AFTA study at the time. And so we were talking a lot about economic impact of art. And you measure it in the AFTA study by measuring it by institutions who report. But
right.
you don't really measure what the impact is of public art. And I think the desire was to have some kind of measurement of economic impact or have economic impact related to public art and to know that that exists in the community. So
It'd be interesting to find out if there's anybody out there, any organization out there that's measuring that already.
There were some attempts in Vermont, which I'll call it community development and placemaking. Art was a part of it. But attempting to look at economic vitality over time as communities, used. I mean, we would say art and other amenities that would draw people to particular areas, making areas seem safer with lighting and attractive things that,
Yeah.
And certainly restaurant businesses that increased, et cetera, as people are drawn to those areas.
A quick survey, a quick Google search says to look for things like surveys to gauge visitor numbers and spending patterns, analyzing property values around public art
Right.
installations,
Right.
tracking increased tourism revenue due to art attractions, utilizing economic impact studies to assess job creation and local business activity generated by public art projects.
I mean, one demonstration just of that you could say is the number of private developers who are getting interested in having public art, and which apparently now in this country is larger than any public investment. So,
I just also thought this group should know that the Arts and Cultural Commission asked the council last month to vote on, or earlier this month, to vote on a request for an arts overlay district in the West End. So so that request has gone to the planning board to try to draft some kind of arts overlay to encourage studio workspace
yeah.
in the West End, with the goal of having an area that we could call the West End Arts District.
We did that about 15 years ago, and the artists decided they didn't want that because they thought it was limiting.
Well, remember when 3S Art Space was built, that was supposed to be art
That was right,
studios on the top
yeah.
floor. That was the whole,
That's
that was the
right.
That was
concept.
the third S.
Right, that was the third S, exactly.
Mhm.
So how would that benefit artists like practically, just creating that overlay district? How would that like?
The goal is to provide zoning incentives for developers who are building new buildings, new housing in that zone, which is still and kind of incentivized to consider artist live workspace or studio space for a certain incentive. So to look at what the incentive could be to get them to do that,
Okay.
or even gallery space.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of space in the city yet, it's still
Yeah.
where we can do that, and that's one of those areas. Yeah.
Lenny, and let that be the last comment, because I know
Just
people
have
have to
someone
go.
who's been heavily invested in helping run the studio at the Button Factory and several other art organizations. Artists are waiting in line for years to get
For space. Yeah.
And I think the Rollingsford Mill, the Salmon Mill is, up for sale.
Yes.
Out of it, and we have people like banging on our doors at the Button Factory, and Jim Buttrick's the owner walking around saying, "Are you moving out?" Like, people like the studio, and
So that's being sold to a developer and the artists are leaving because
not the
it's.
Button Factory.
No,
Not
the
the- no, no, I
Rollinsford,
meant the
Rollinsford,
Rollinsford, yeah.
That's, I've had.
I think it's a Chimberg. It's gonna be a residential Chimberg property.
Yeah, residential.
See that?
Yeah,
Wow.
it's fabulous,
big.
like fabulous space.
It's
beautiful.
This isn't a comment, but January 15th, if anyone could get me anything for the inventory. But send it earlier if you
Okay.
notice anything or have more content, I'm updating as I receive information.
Okay. All right, so, thank you, everybody, and so various things will go out with some reminders about these dates and other things we said we would do.
I know you want to close, but are we gonna have any future discussion where we discuss the art that was presented to us tonight?
Good question.
I'll write
How
up
does
what
that
we,
work?
I'll write up what we talked about, just like we always do. And people can weigh in on what's there. I assume we'd have future discussion when a next step when a feasibility opens up. But at this point, you know, we kind of have what we have.
Okay.
Okay,
Great.
so a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Yeah. Second. See everybody in the new year.
Yes.
Happy holidays.
Holiday.